Hey guys, so what's been happening in the hobby this week? Well, I thought we'd, get into some Shatterpoint. I finally had a game of it, so I can start talking about it. And I thought while we do that, I'm gonna paint this Rex here, the clone trooper, and I'm going to be using my Space Marine color scheme on this one to do, use that Warhammer color scheme, but use it on a Star Wars mini. I think that'll be really cool and a fun thing to try. I've always wanted to do that. I mean, metallic colors, which is what we're going to be using. If I'm really good, I'll put some images of my Space Marines up there so you can see what I'm talking about. But metallic colors on Stormtroopers and Clone Warriors, or at least on Stormtroopers, has been done before. But I think the combination of those colors that I've got will work really well on this one and be a fun thing to do while we chat about Shatterpoint and my initial impressions, that sort of thing, and get into some discussions on it because it's an interesting game for sure. I definitely enjoyed it, but there are some interesting things about it in comparison to, let's say, MCP as well, which is made by the same company, Atomic Mass Games, and in comparative terms to something like a Warhammer game or a Games Workshop game. So yeah, that'll be a bit of fun to talk about, and hopefully this guy will come up really cool. Okay, so Shatterpoint. Well, what can I say? My initial impressions, as I said, is I do like it. It is a really interesting game and different from MCP. I guess on the surface it might seem like maybe those two games are going to be quite similar, but there is actually some differences. Some of the structure of it is similar. I mean, you're fighting over these points on a similar, same size board, the 3x3, that sort of thing. But there is definitely some, and obviously the scale and everything is the same. The base sizes and things like that are the same, or at least I think they are. And so there are some elements there that are going in the same sort of way, but the scoring is slightly different, and how it plays out does actually change. And there are a few factors that make the change, not just obviously the fact that the stats and the abilities and everything are unique to that game, but other factors as well, which we'll go into. So yeah, my initial impression is it is a fun game, and I was playing. What was I playing? So I was playing the stuff that came in the starter box. So I played Darth Maul and the droids and the droid hero there. I can't remember what his name is. And then I think, is it not something with a K, I think. Anyway, so there's those, and then I used the Mandos, the ones that were from the I guess the evil side, the one with the sniper rifle, and the other two from the evil part of that faction. Or I think you can use them on both sides, but anyway, I was using those. And the one I painted earlier in the year what's her name? I don't know. Anyway, the female Sith, the Jedi one. So I had like the two evil ones, and a bunch of the evil little henchmen and stuff, and then that was what I played. So, and I was against another evil faction. So I was playing a version of Darth Vader, some Dark Troopers, and that sort of thing, with some Stormtroopers and Moff Gideon. So it was like an evil on evil kind of fight. So that was really fun because that side is actually a side I was thinking of maybe trying to play, is the whole like Stormtrooper thing, and with Darth Vader and that sort of thing. So yeah, it was really fun to watch that play out as well. And so that's where the game started from that point. So we set up the board and got everything ready, and now and this is where we start to see the changes. So one of the things that sets Shatterpoint apart from, let's say, MCP is that there is a lot of verticality. So you have a lot of almost like Necromunda. You've got these sort of platforms and levels, and with the way the movement works, you're basically imagining it on a flat plane. So you're measuring straight forward, but you can then go up and down and so on, and there are little movements there that you do along the way. So essentially, though, you're kind of imagining it on a flat plane. So the terrain does have an impact on the game, but they've sort of streamlined the movement way you get around it to move up and down, and also the way you can contest objectives on either the same elevation or in different elevations. So there are rules that govern that as well. So it is interesting from that point of view, from holding objectives and that sort of stuff. So you start to arrange this table, and it is starting to feel different. MCP is mostly done on a flat ground. around. You have a lot of like smaller pieces of terrain and so on that you can throw and that sort of stuff, and you've got like buildings that you move around, but you don't have that sort of platforms and elevation going on. So that was really interesting. And then you have a look at the cards. So their stat cards have a lot of them have two sides. They have this sort of like running tally of damage that you do, and then this sort of indicates almost like a damage tree, and this indicates the type of damage that you do and other effects that may happen. So you can sort of choose a way on this tree to affect your enemy, who you're facing, and this might have different values. So one might have pushes in addition to the damage. One might put status effects on the enemy unit, that sort of thing. And so depending on what you're fighting, you might change that tree, or even flip the unit card altogether and fight on a totally different profile. So some of these characters have that, not all of them, but mostly your primary heroes, that sort of thing. They'll have two different sides, like Darth Maul, Darth Vader, and so on. So, instantly you're starting to see a difference in the micro of the tactics, like the small decision making that you're doing. And that was really interesting, because in MCP, you've got these powers, and the powers soup up and you do your different things that way. But here you've got a sort of a tempo play. So you're sort of building on more successful dice rolls that then stack these different effects, that you can go down these trees that then give you added bonuses and so on. So it's like an interesting way to resolve damage and resolve combats, and that is quite cool. It is similar to MCP, I would say, from a damage point of view, from the fact that the characters are very hard to actually kill and get off the table. They're usually there for quite a long time, just like an MCP, and they have sort of stages of being wounded and so on, and that sort of goes over the whole course of the game, and usually playing sort of best of three, so it's sort of 3 games, and you're trying to get to build your points up to win the struggle, as they call it. And so, yeah, we get into the game, and with the game mechanics and how this is working, you also have these set of cards, and one of the cards is a Shatterpoint card, and so each one of these cards has your characters on it, and you're sort of drawing from that, and that's your activation. So it's alternate activations, and when you get that Shatterpoint card, you can then pick any character you like to be activated, and this could include one that's already gone before. So that means like a double activation. So that's really interesting, and that creates this dynamic of what you should do with each one, and sort of target priority sort of choices, and micro, as I said, the way the damage is dealt and how those sort of little micro decisions are made really affect the overall game. And so initially, it's not apparent exactly the tactics that you're going to employ, because you sort of have this random activation. So you've got to be aware of that. And initial placement, I think, is quite important. But it was like an emergent tactics, especially not playing it before. As I was playing it, I could see it, and it would start to come forward. But it's not initially apparent what's going on until you start to see these things roll out over the course of those 3 games. You start to see it more and more, and where the positioning starts to become more effective. But it isn't always apparent in the beginning. So, what happened? Well, Darth Maul did his thing. He ran out, and he was able to eventually double activate over the course of the first game, or over the course of those games. He was right in their lines. We had objectives in sort of a ring around the board, and some varying sort of changes to those objectives as the games went on, like one being worth double points, etc. And he did what Darth Maul does. He ran in like a torpedo, did a bunch of damage, and then died, and that was very cinematic. That's exactly what I wanted to do, on my first game. Darth Vader did the same thing, came into my lines, did the thing. The Dark Troopers and all, and those more elite units, they were very tough to get rid of, and everything kind of did its thing. The Mandos were jumping around and doing their bit, and the Stormtroopers died, and that felt like, it did feel very cinematic, and that's probably, I guess, we'll move on to my first, set of pros. What is this game really, doing for you? And I think that it is really describing the Star Wars universe. and the characters do feel a lot like what they're meant to. Now, I guess I could have done a different thing with Darth Maul, and maybe that would have changed my mind on whether he felt like Darth Maul or not. But, I ran him forward, and he did what he did, and it felt very much in theme. And so I think that's something that can be said about both MCP and Shatterpoint, is that, they both feel like you're playing the characters. And that's really important for a sort of hero type game like this, where these sort of individual characters are really important, both to the world and to the game. You get that nice narrative, that feeling that you're a part of this little world, and it feels right. So I think that's a really big bonus to the game. And the other sort of elements are, I mean, there's lots. I mean, you've got the scale, the terrain, the elevation, those damaged trees and how they affect the play, that sort of thing, and that's all really interesting. And there's many more positives to the hobby side and so on, which we'll get into. But I'll counterpoint this with what I would say would be possibly a negative, but I would have to play more to get into it, is that I found, because of the way the movement is done and how you move, and this is actually a criticism of both MCP and Shatterpoint to some extent, I'm the sort of person that loves positioning and movement, and that's like something I really enjoy. It's what I like about old world and fantasy, and I like it when you can do it well in Age of Sigmar and 40k, and doing things like move blocking and screening and like inching things out, those micro differences in measurement that really matter between taking an objective and not. Now, because in this you're measuring straight forward and then you're placing through elevations, that means that you're going to eventually unintentionally have little micro jumps forward. So, a movement that might be so far is now going a little bit further. And then because these characters have multiple ways to move over the course of their activation, you're getting multiple little micro inches as you're moving up and down elevations, etc. And that can get you onto an objective or not. Now, I don't know exactly what the distances were of the objectives. I've never measured it, because you're using all these sort of measuring sticks that don't have any measurement on them. So I'd have to actually measure it out to see what the real measurements are, so you can tell that. But it felt very easy to get around the board. Like, I never felt like, if I was on one side, that I couldn't get to the other side. I could literally do that in one activation, and that's what was happening. So my opponent would have a model on the other side. He could just instantly move across and get to the other side. There was no sort of like blocking him out or him being out of position. It felt like everyone was in position at all times. Very rarely. There was a couple of moments where things were slightly out of position, but it felt very easy to get in. And I think most of that comes down to this sort of elastic kind of measuring, where you can't quite get it accurately. So you're kind of just doing a sort of loosey-goosey kind of thing. And that's fine, like for a fun game, that's totally fine. But I would imagine if you wanted to play this more competitively, that would start to become a problem, because you would need to make sure it's accurate. And when you have a lot of elevations, I feel like that could be, a negative for the game if you're really into the positioning, because that would be really fun, right? To edge someone off an objective, or they think they're going to get in and they just miss out. And there are multiple ways to move in this, so it is quite easy to get around from one objective to another. So I think that's sort of my first sort of negative, and something that I've always thought for both games is that you can move through bases, through units. They don't block anything, so you can just measure straight through them. And I feel like that's something that I would prefer not to be in the game. Like, I think I would like units to block movement, so you have to go round, and that would mean that some of these smaller units like the droids that aren't very good in combat but on a large base, you've got two of those. Well, you could put them together and move block someone so they can't get onto the objective, or you could do little tricks like that to lengthen the move of your opponent's model, so maybe they don't get in, maybe they don't get where they want to be, maybe they are out of range for one of their guns. So those sorts of things I think would be really interesting, just for movement, not necessarily to shoot or any of those sort of, or their abilities, but just for movement. I think that would be really interesting. But I know that's not in the game, so that's just more of a personal thing. I like that about games, when you can do those sort of micro moves. I think that's pretty fun, but you still can do it. As I said, I'll play more games and play around with that. You can do it a bit in MCP, but I'm sure Shatterpoint does have that, where you can sort of just make it a little bit hard for people to get to where they want to go, and I think that would improve some of those positioning tactics. But overall, it is a fun game. So yeah, so what are some of those other fun elements? Well, you've got the size, the scale of the minis. From a hobby point of view, they give you a chance to delve into a different scale, that sort of thing. And I think that's a really positive element of this game, among others like MCP as well. But it really is a great way to engage in a different scale. And along with that scale, you have different opportunities for painting them, that sort of thing. Like as you see here, I'm doing my own color scheme and trying out some different themes. There's a lot of flexibility to this type of these type of minis. They've got a different aesthetic, a different kind of look. It can push you down different roads and really open up some new ideas for you. And I think that's really great alongside, let's say, some of your Warhammer hobby to have one of these games like Shatterpoint or MCP or any of those. We've talked about this before, having those sort of refresher games or those other games in the background that help you sort of, have a bit of a break from the main game that you might be playing, or they might become the main game. Like in my hobby group, Shatterpoint and MCP have become sort of like a mainstay of our hobby group, and many of us are playing it quite regularly, going to tournaments, etc. And so that's really interesting, and so that you can generate that love of it so much that it becomes the main game, and sort of Warhammer stuff gets put on the back burner. So that's a really big positive to this game. It really gives a fresh style, and obviously the gameplay and everything is very different, so it gives you that new sort of vibe, and I can really see that with Shatterpoint. It does have a very unique sort of way it likes to show you those tactics and show you the way the game plays out. So I'm definitely keen for more. I think that's one of its benefits is its uniqueness of some of those elements to movement, the damage trees, and all of that on their unit cards. That does give a nice opportunity for developing tactics in a different way. And then obviously you have the terrain, which is, unique and all those elevations. So it gives you that Necromunda vibe, that sort of thing, which I think is really great. Like out of the tables that I've seen from the guys in our hobby group that have been doing it, they look great. Tons of, 3D printed terrain and all that sort of thing with all these, gantries and, little ramps and so on. It looks really cool, and that takes me back to those early days of Necromunda. And I really love all that. That's like, we all do, right? Everyone that's in the hobby loves that stuff. It brings you back to that early days of being a kid and enjoying this and all that sort of thing. And if you've never done this as a kid, I'm sure it's still pulling on your heartstrings, because if you did have it as a kid, you would have definitely loved it. Or you might have done Lego or any of those sorts of things as a kid, and it really draws from the same sort of pool of coolness for when you're a kid. And so I like it about it. It definitely draws me in for that side of it. So I think there's a lot of benefits there, and then you've got obviously the cost. The cost is comparatively cheap. You can just get that core set and you've got everything you need for two sides. But even if you buy the individual boxes, 2 boxes is enough for one side. You get your character and your primary, your secondary, and your sort of supporting units. They're all in one box. So you just need 2 boxes. So it's doubled, and then that's it. And so that's a very cheap game, or very cheap army for collecting. So that's really cool. If you want to get into the tactics, well, then obviously it's going to cost you more. But just to have a go at it is pretty cheap, and that's a wonderful thing. And they do offer their core rules on PDF for download off their website, Atomic Mass Games. So that's really great. So you almost don't even need to buy the core set either. So I think for all those reasons, there's a lot of benefits there to this game, and I'm sure there are more solid negatives to be put towards it. But as I've only played one game, I don't want to be too harsh here or there on it. But I do feel like it's definitely a great refresher game or secondary, tertiary game to play once in a while with your mates to mix things up a bit. I think that's pretty good, and it's such a low cost of entry comparatively to the other games that you could just buy a core set between you and your mates or whatever, and maybe 1 or 2 other boxes, and you'd have enough to share between you guys to play some games, or just you and one other friend, or whatever it is, right? Or just for yourself, and then you can just con your friends into playing it with you, because it has the terrain in the box and all that sort of thing. So you don't really need much else, just a flat area to play. So I think it's a pretty cool game. We're definitely going to revisit this and talk about it more as I play more games and see where the faults are. I do know there are some broken units in the game, and some sort of imbalances here and there, and some of the abilities can be a bit samey across some of the units, or this is what I've been told by players that play it more regularly. And so I know there are some criticisms to the game that play it when you play it more regularly, but as a sometimes game, I don't think you're going to notice those things. I think that's more just for more competitive sides, and it might be just the fact that there isn't enough units yet to really give you that list building depth, as opposed to, let's say, MCP that now has, you know, a massive roster of heroes to choose from and how you make your list, which is a massive strength to that game. That game really does, you know, live and breathe off the back of such a huge roster for your list building, which I think really improves that game massively and gives it its depth, which is something that I think Shatterpoint will slowly get towards as more and more of these units are released. You'll have bigger rosters to draw from and different combinations of abilities to use, and I think that's a pretty healthy future for it. So yeah, I'm sort of hesitant to put any really sort of cons there into the game this early on, but yeah, it's been really fun, and I really enjoyed it, and it was very cinematic, and I think that's the main thing, right? You know, I had fun, I enjoyed my time with my mates and all that sort of thing, and it was a good time. So, you know, that's the best tick of approval you can have for a game, right? When your first experience is fun, enjoyable, and you want to have some more of it, which I do. I definitely want to play some more, and you'll be seeing more of these minis on the channel, because yeah, they're definitely fun to paint as well, which is cool. So, you know, I think I'll leave that here for my first sort of initial impressions. There isn't much negative to say. There's not a lot of negativities about the game. It's very fun, and we can discuss this more and get into maybe some constructive criticisms, you know, later on in terms of the gameplay and so on, you know, on another video. But if you're interested in this game, or you're keen on it, it's a wonderful game. Like there's really, you know, Atomic Mass Games has really hit it out of the park on both their games. They've done a great job of just releasing two games which are, you know, among their other games that they support, Legion, etc. It's just a really good fun time. So, you know, you can't go wrong with it. I think that it's pretty cool. So we'll leave it there. Let's go take a look and see how I've gone with Rex, and see if my Space Marine color scheme has actually come up good or not, and I'll give you my closing thoughts. And there we go, one Space Marine inspired color scheme on Rex, the clone trooper. So yeah, really, really cool. I really enjoyed this. I was hoping it would work, and you know, it has. It's come up pretty cool, and I'm really happy with it. So it'll be great to see more of these in this color scheme. You know, I think the combination in the helmets with the black and the bone, and how I do the reverse for the normal troopers and so on, and the different levels of that will be really fun to do. You know, and all the different sorts of colors, the blue blacks and the sort of enameled look on the shoulder pads, and then the neutral grays and so on, and the metallic armor, and that it's yeah, it's a cool one to do. I enjoy it on the Space Marines, and it's great that it's worked out nicely on these clone troopers. So it'll be cool to do it on some stormtroopers and the other variants. I think that'll be really fun to see how that goes as I build up the collection. So you'll definitely see more on the channel, and we'll see how that looks in a larger collection. But yeah, I'm quietly positive about this. It's pretty cool. It's going to come up nice, I think. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed watching me paint this. It has been a real pleasure. It's just been a really nice, you know, change of pace, and just doing something like this has been really fun. And I hope you've enjoyed my thoughts on Shatterpoint, and you know, maybe it's influenced you to have a little go at it with your mates in your club, or down at the local store, or wherever you play your games. And because it is a fun game, you know, I'm enjoying it, and I'm definitely keen to try a little more and get a bit more of a nuanced opinion of the game. And we'll come back to it and have another chat and so on as the game matures, and as I play more games and so on, we'll be able to talk about it more. Yeah, but it's definitely a great start. I'm very happy. So I'll leave a nice image for this one at the end with the paint list as I normally do. But I hope you've enjoyed this. Please hit that like button, subscribe button. It really helps me out. And I guess I'll catch you on the next one.